Hello everyone, it's me, Madame Pamita, and we're doing Meet My Familiar, another episode of Meet My Familiar. Today we're going to be talking with Laetitia Barbier about her beautiful familiar. So as soon as she jumps on here, we will bring her on. While we're waiting for her to come on, I wanted to let everybody know that the reason we're doing Meet My Familiar and talking with people about their familiars and talking with magical people, people that are tarot readers, witches, pagans, magical practitioners of all different kinds, is because everyone kind of has this unique story, and it's such a fun thing to find out about these familiars. So why we're doing this is because I have a new book coming out, which is called The Witch's Guide to Animal Familiars. It's only a few weeks away. It's going to be coming out on the 28th. I'm very, very excited about that. And so on the 13th of January, so just in 2 weeks, I'll be hosting a full moon workshop called An Introduction to Familiar Magic. This is where you're going to learn how to identify a familiar, how to work with a familiar, what a familiar can bring to your magical practice. And it's normally a $40 workshop. All my full moon workshops are $40. But if you would like to get it for free and learn how to do all of these things, it's a workshop over Zoom. All you have to do is go to animalfamiliars.com, pre-order a copy of The Witch's Guide to Animal Familiars. You will get a link so that you get a coupon to sign up for that class, and you can join me for free. So I'm giving away one of my full moon workshops to everybody that pre-orders. So for the price of the book, you're going to get an amazing book. You're also going to get this amazing class that teaches you how to do witchcraft with your beloved animals. So I'm bringing Laetitia on. Hold on, let me bring her in here. So excited to have her on. We are like bosom buddies, even though we only really met like a year ago. But we have so much in common. There she is.
Hello.
Hello. Bonjour, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Ça va?
Ça va plutôt bien, yes.
Ah,
Les
great.
familles.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
excited to see you. And
I'm I'm so
congratulations for your
Oh
book.
my gosh, I'm so excited to talk with you about your animals, talk with you about working with familiars in your magic, and just to see you and to see your face makes
Oh,
me so happy. And just
same.
for us to talk.
It's so fun to hang out. First
I
time in
know,
2025.
I
I'm
know.
excited.
This is a great way to start the year, really, you and I getting together. I have to tell you, part of my let's say under the radar reason for doing these interviews is I get to see all my friends too. So
It's fun. I
I
mean,
know.
I'm excited, and also like you bring such an interesting topic of conversation. I'm excited to actually see what people have to contribute for this because
It's
it's
an amazing.
it's a
Yeah,
rabbit hole.
it's amazing. So let me tell you, for those of you, the one or two of you who don't know who Leticia is, let me tell you about who she is. I pulled your bio off this College for Psychic Studies. So if anything is not up to date, because we know how
I
these
think
bios are, you'll fill in at the end. So it says French-born Laetitia Barbier is an independent scholar as well as a professional tarot reader and teacher. And she's an amazing scholar and tarot reader and teacher. I have been in her workshops and classes and have been so blown away by the information. So that's my little 2 cents in there. She earned a bachelor's degree in art history from La Sorbonne University in Paris in 2009. Laetitia has worked with Morbid Anatomy from 2011 to 2024 as a programming director, head librarian, and occasional curator. Her book, Tarot and Divination Cards, A Visual Archive, was published in 2021 with a foreword by Rachel Pollack. Oh, Rachel is amazing. Her little spirit watching over your book is such a beautiful thing. She is the author of the Tiger Tarot Guidebook, a unique tarot deck by symbolist artist Laurie Field. Laetitia has lectured, taught, and read cards for various cultural institutions such as Greenwood Cemetery, Art Yard, Fotografiska New York, the College of Psychic Studies in London, and the New York Public Library, and she lives in Brooklyn, New York. So is there anything that's more up to date that's missing from this bio?
I think that's enough. Like I was just like, I'm proud of. I assume all of the weird projects I've done, and nothing is missing so far. So we'll just
Good.
call it a day. But so where do we start?
Well, So first of all, tell us who your familiars have been or are. Tell us a little bit about that, because I'd love to know more about that, because we've never really talked about this topic. We've talked about
Well,
many other topics, but we have not talked about this topic together.
it's just, I found that that's it. You know, I was making myself the reflection because we never talked about this, and I was like, I was wondering, does she know I actually do not have a pet?
Oh,
But I do have a lot of like animal stories, and I have a very strong relationship with dogs, which I'll talk about in a second.
well,
But I wanted to
I
show
want to
you.
say something that
uh,
familiars don't have to be pets. So in my book, I go into, yes, we have a whole big sections on pets, but they can be farm animals, wild animals, so, and animals that even that belong to someone else. I haven't even really explored that, but of course, that could be an animal that wants to work with you and lend their energy for magic is my definition of a familiar. So they
so
can
so
really show up in all forms.
so I'll be a perfect example of those people who do not own the animal that have been guiding their life. I wanted to show you something. I'm wearing something special for the life today. It's a sweater. I don't know if you can see. It's a sweater and it has sheeps on them.
Oh my
So that
gosh.
you have the black sheep.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah.
this, my first familiar is the black sheep. Kind of, but so like not too beyond the jokes and stuff. So I've always I'm more of a feline person. I've always I had a cat when I was a kid. Um, his name was Hercules, and it was super sweet, and we had a very special relationship. And I've always behaved more like a cat person. I'm very independent. I'm very kind of nonchalant, and I'm loyal, but loyal like a cat. And I've just always, I've always been, more attracted by feline in general, like big cat, tigers, black cat, of course, and I thought for the longest years, I thought that they were my familiar, that they were my animal, because I had such a love for them, and so it started, um, I think about 15 or 17 years ago. I I started to have it's very strange. I started to have sleep paralysis episodes, and in some of them, often enough, there would be a very large black dog, kind of a Doberman dog, but it was a lady. It was a she Doberman, so with like all the tits coming out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you had the terrifying like, I mean, it's just like sleep paralysis really sucks, but like it's just basically like you cannot, like you're in your room, it's like the same way you left it, and then you can't move, and so I was kind of like terrified of dogs in general. Never got attacked by them, but just like not necessarily comfortable. And then this big dog came and then started to lick my hand, and I remember being in that state, kind of, and like in this kind of liminal state, and feeling the tongue of the dog, the wet tongue of that dog, and I was just really, like preoccupied by that vision, and then the sleep paralysis was a really, like short time, maybe like three years of my life. I had them, but then I started to have all those weird encounters with dogs in dreams and in real life, and so we had my grandfather, one of my grandfather passed away. I think it was in 2005. And maybe 5 years later, my cousin in Burgundy, France, rural Burgundy, decided to get married. So I went to the wedding. And it was the night before the wedding. So we were kind of preparing the festive hall, like we had putting the plates and stuff. And so we were walking in this rural area, like in the middle of the night. And we were talking together. It's like, oh, like I'm so proud, like you were getting married, and it's such a wonderful time to see you. And oh yeah, it's very sad that our grandfather couldn't be there. He would have loved seeing you, being so happy with this guy. And then suddenly, this black dog emerged from fucking nowhere, running, and then just stood right in front of us. And so we were, me and my cousin Delphine, we were just kind of like, what is this? And so we looked at the dog looked at us, and then the dog had no color nor anything. It was like this beautiful black dog, not a like Doberman, but with a very slick black fur that kind of like even shines in the night, you know, very silky. And then, so, you know, we kind of like looked at the dog looked at us. We had this kind of exchange for 5 seconds, and then you went off in the opposite direction, completely in the opposite direction. And so like very often they appear in my dream. I had this thing for, you know, it's like it's a certain type of like dog-like animal. Wolf don't really belong there, but like dog, coyote. I had a couple of coyote experiences when I was in Mexico, and sometimes fox, but it mostly surrounds the dog and the dog and the coyote. And then once, I know it's gonna sound very strange, but once I had this same, you know, recently, like within the past 2 years, I had this sleep paralysis episode in my bed, and I saw this kind of like shiny silhouette on my night table, and that shiny silhouette was the shape of one of those statues of Anubis, the jackal dog, sitting so in kind of in jackal form. And so I woke up the day after, and there is a statue like this at the British Museum. So it exists. But and so I thought, you know, like at that point I was like a friend of mine was in transition to pass in the other world. So like I felt like maybe I interpreted that as Anubis kind of like giving me the sacred warning that they will just care for me. And that I should just kind of leave him do his work at this point. But so yeah, so like it's just, you know, like it was just fascinating to me because they came again and again and again. It's not an animal that I feel necessarily comfortable. Again, more of a cat person, but their presence always made me feel like safe, and I felt like several times I had this vision where they kind of like they were guardians or psychopomp to a certain extent, you know, like that thing that I talked about earlier with my, you know, what we believe was the spirit of my grandfather coming, just showing up for the wedding and then leaving. All that stuff was just really intriguing.
Well, I'm going to say something about that. I spent a lot of time in Burgundy, and in fact, Marie-Georges, a person I know from Burgundy, is actually on here.
Yes.
And so when when you're in a village, everybody knows every dog, every animal. They know who it belongs to. Your cousin Delphine would have known that dog if that was a dog of the village. So I think that's what people have to understand, because most of us live in the cities. We don't understand village life. You know, every kid, every dog,
everyone knows everyone.
Every goose, every duck, anything that lives in that village, you know who it belongs to. So to see that dog with no color, beautiful shiny dog with no color, in a village that was unknown to you guys is extremely rare, extremely special. And also, this is another thing, the intuitive knowing of this messenger animal. I would call this a messenger animal that comes to you, or, you know, even a guide animal that comes to you. You know it. So it may look like, well, what's a big deal? You saw a dog at night. To a person who is not spiritual or not psychic or not intuitive, it may just look like no big deal. But a person who is magical, intuitive, and spiritual is going to know the difference, and you just have that inner knowing, which that clair sentience, right?
Yeah.
You know, this is a weird, special thing.
In the case of the wedding dog, I mean, my cousin, who was the bride, she's definitely not. She will not enter the strict parameters of what we call woo woo. So she's just a cool girl, you know. But like both of us, we were so stunned. Like we recognized that there was something. Like it felt like the presence of her.
So very, very special. Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh my gosh. So and another thing that's interesting about what you're saying that I think is important for people to understand in terms of working with animals. I talk, of course, the book is The Witch's Guide to Familiar Magic, and familiars are ones that really lend their energy to our magic. But I talk about other things as well, like animal messengers, which are these animals that will come into our life to share a message, like the image of Anubis that you saw, to give you a message.
Yeah.
You're not going to be necessarily working with Anubis every day on every kind of magic, but the fact that you got that message, and you got this message from this certain kind of dog that you knew and understood the symbolism. You knew because you had been to the British Museum, which, oh my gosh, British Museum, great, but also they could do better. We know that. But in terms of like being able to see all those beautiful things in one place, it is, so the museums in Europe that were collecting things back in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, of course, have amazing things in them, right?
But it kind of ties up with the animal magic. Like the British Museum owns this statue of the Egyptian goddess Bastet, the cat. It's a very, very famous cat statue. It has like a golden ring, I think, around the nose.
Yeah.
And when you go there, you're reminded. I guess you can have that in any museum that has an interesting collection. It's like how much animals were deified, worshipped. Like that. Those are not statues. Those are like representation. Like posts that were supposed to invoke the presence of the animal that were supposed to be worshipped and revered. And every time I go, even though we have the illusion that those are just aesthetically pleasing, you can just feel that. You feel the weight, the gaze of some of those animals that have been recreated in bronze, or I think it's just very powerful. It's very powerful.
My gosh. Another thing too that your stories bring up as well is that the openness that you have, which I think that comes with somebody who is very intuitive, very open, very, psychically open. You're also open to synchronicities. You're open in lots of ways. And I love that openness also shows up in the fact that this wasn't your preferred animal.
Yeah.
Your preferred animal was a cat. You had preferred something else. But I say, if you can be very open about the possibilities of what animal wants to work with you, the more open you are, the more encounters you're going to have, the more information, and the more useful things that can get. I kind of, in some ways, it's a little bit, you could say, a little bit like dating. If you have, it's good to have particular wishes and desires, of course, but when you become more open, some surprising possibilities can come in, right? If you're dating and you're thinking like, well, I'll only date someone of this age group, you might be missing out on somebody that's really amazing that would be such a match, right? So I think about like that openness that you had. I think you naturally have it because you're so, as you say, in that world of woo-woo and all that. And then because you are there and you are comfortable there, or you feel, I think you really, work with energies, and by being so open, these amazing dogs have come into your life in real life, in magical ways, as messengers, as spirits, all of these ways, because you were willing to let go of, or I don't even think you let go. You were willing to say, hey, I love cats, but I'm open to whatever coming to me, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And it's just, I think that, especially like the moment where I started to have those experiences, it was really an interesting time. I was, like in my early 20s, and it's a moment in my life where I was starting to be, kind of rekindle with some of the magical practice that I've had done when I was like earlier as a teen. So I think it was just like I feel that they came as like ambassadors, like ambassadors kind of like showing me, like that there is, it's almost like in Alice in Wonderland, things are not always what they seem, like you have this kind of like, like layering of dimension, maybe, you know, like, but it felt like this. It felt like almost like them, you know, like granting granting me to see their presence, so I could understand that if I can't see the change I, you know, conjure or want to create, or they will be a witness for it. And that was just really fascinating. And I'm, you know, like I have a, I there is not, well, I don't, you know, there is a one place where you can find a lot of animal shrines, and and I mean, Japan is the place for animal shrines. And you know, obviously, I'm not going to pretend that I'm a Shinto, you know, worshiper. But I went to Kyoto last year, and we went to this really incredible fox temple. Like, it's very famous. It has this like very famous, you know, like
Path.
hundreds and hundreds of gates that
Yeah,
are.
the gates. Yeah.
And I felt, you know, like I felt when I was there, I felt compelled to just, you know, like do a couple of offerings to just celebrate this like canine sacred relationship, because unfortunately that's the thing, you know, like unless you decide, you can probably tell us more, you know, like I don't work with animal familiar. This
Yeah.
is not my tradition, but they still come and they still appear and they still, you know, like I feel, you know, like I have a bird, an auk that I saw in Brooklyn, an auk in Brooklyn, you know, like it's a rare enough occurrence that you want to think that it's a signal. And I did, you know, like I felt it felt like a message, but I see them as messenger, not necessarily like helpers or familiars. And yet, you know, like there is some places in the world where, you know, like people, you know, celebrate those animals like, well, like living gods. And so it's actually, it felt really special to be able to just kind of like, you know, give something back in some of those places.
Well, I also want to know in like this, let's say, for example, the dogs coming to you, right, as messengers, as a result of that connection, because now you have a different relationship to dogs, right? Because of that, the relationship
Oh,
to
I'm
dogs is
still,
completely different, right?
I know, you know what? I'm still terrified of dogs. You know, I'm terrified of dogs. I mean, that depends what we call dogs. You know, like I enjoy the small dogs, like Chihuahuas. You know, like I'm fantasizing on having maybe one day, for my future years, I want a little dashing, you know, like the
Yeah.
sausage dog.
Yeah.
But I'm still very, you know, like I'm still very intimidated by dogs, and like I still see them as like, you know, wild. It's like the, you know, on the moon card on the tarot, you know, those
Yeah.
wild creatures that are kind of like instinctively just, you know, like there is something so untamable in them that I'm just
Yeah.
like, "Oh." But that dog relationship is really, you know, from like this other place, you know, like there's some dogs I know will be there as like sacred guardian of my world. So,
I
but
think a
yeah,
dog will probably come into your life at that right moment, or
yeah,
maybe the wrong moment.
yeah,
I don't know, but just at that moment when you're really meant
yeah,
to bring that dog in, right? You
and
know, that dog will show up.
that's true, and that maybe, but I remember, not that I'm a, you know, like, I'm not an animal medium, and but I've seen, you know, like I've seen dogs, like I met real dogs in my life, like I knew they were, that this is not, there were no dog, you know, like they felt like they were like thousands of years old,
Yeah.
you know. I remember my friends adopted that dog from a shelter, and that creature was just so wise, you know, like, and it's just like that I had this elegance and this humility, but also this just like, you know, seen it all, has done it all, you know. And that I found like really extraordinary. And I think this is one of, you know, I really enjoy animals. I don't get to see them in the wild very often. I do, you know, go to places where let's say the fauna is slightly different, and I do enjoy, you know, going to Mexico or Thailand. The birds in the streets are just different, and like it's just so marvelous. But there is something to be said about just like, you know, like meeting, you know, when you meet certain animals and the way they behave, the way they look at you, like you just see, you know, like like I don't know how to say that. Your human ego is like melting like an ice cream in Coney Island in summer, you know? It's just like you believe you were at the top of the food chain, but like just and that I found fascinating. That just that and you know, like the fact that just simply by their regal presence, you know, they can teach us like so much. And yeah, like I hope that everyone gets to
Now,
experience that.
let me ask you a question. After this is, I'm curious. The answer can be no, but after dogs began appearing for you, showing up for you in this spirit way, in this magical way, did you ever, like, they're coming to you? Did you ever reach out like to them and go invite them into your practice, or call on the spirit of a dog, or embody it in some way, or do something that was more, let's say, proactive or more directed from you, came from you, versus the dog appearing? Like, the dog appearing is so much a messenger that you don't invoke. It's just happening for you. But then did you take some of the energy? The reason I'm asking this, I'll tell you why. Because for when I was taking care of my son when he was going through a health crisis, bears were everywhere for me.
Oh,
Bears kept showing up everywhere. Not real bears, but bear images, bear name, the word. I had a client who gave me a 6-foot tall bear painting, and it was like everything from that moment was bears, bears, bears everywhere. And then as soon as he got well, the bears dropped off.
yeah.
The bear message just dropped off. So this to me is like that example of a messenger that came for a particular purpose. Bears may show up for me again, but I think it's that bear energy of the mama bear. So when this was happening, I really leaned into the bear because I really, really wanted to have that energy. Alec, I'm sorry, our postman's here. There's a present for you on the table there. Sorry. He didn't get his Christmas present and his holiday present.
Merry Christmas!
Our mailman, our wonderful mailman. I'm at the shop. We're getting shop today, obviously.
The messenger.
The messenger. Right, exactly. We're talking about the
messenger.
messenger. There's a correlation. Happy New Year. So anyway, so we were, when I was really leaning into that bear energy. So I would do vision journeys where I would go and meet with the bear. So I was actively doing things because I knew I needed that mother bear strength, power, protection, you know, all of that. It really was so helpful when I was going through that. So I'm wondering, have you yet done that where you've reached out to the dogs, or reached out to Anubis, or reached out to these spirits or to the coyotes, or to these foxes, or whatever, in active ways, asking for to lend their energy, or to, you know, whatever?
So I had not with the dogs, but like it's been like a couple of years, and it's like I don't know if it's still going on, but I had you know, like I guess it's an offshoot of my cat relationship. I started to have this like very strong interest for tigers, and I've never met a tiger personally, but I I went to Thailand and a couple of places in Asia, and for some reason, like I just I just became completely enthralled by them. And then there was this kind of like the William Blake tiger. I was just kind of like became this kind of almost like obsessive prayer, and then like I really took this as like, okay, I'm just gonna tigers want to be around, so I made a little shrine. Like in Thailand they have they worship tigers, so I started to kind of like I bought an amulet, and then I just made a little shrine, and I started to work on it, and then just basically like do visualization, whatever, was kind of facing that animal. And then there was basically throughout the last year, like I have not to give too many details, but I understood why I needed like that they showed up a year before.
Yeah.
And then it was the moment where like I had to they let me borrow some some of their kind of great tigerness, and then I used it, and I'm in this place now where I think it's like time to release it. But I think like in a very almost I want to say concrete way. It was just, it felt like like, you know, they gave me the blueprints of an energy that I had to balance inside myself, you know. And it was I want to say it's interesting. There's a lot of lore in Thailand about like tigers. They usually are the symbol of authority, and you know, like the kick Thai,
Muay Thai.
Muay Thai
Yeah.
boxer, Muay Thai boxer have them tattooed because they're like just those like big predatorial animals. And but there is, you know, all this lore of like, you know, women owning those you know, doing the tattoos as well in Thailand, just kind of a thing. There's something about the tiger that has this kind of like, the tiger doesn't need to be angry, you know. It has this very quiet authority. And I think this is what became to represent at this point. This, you have like, you know, instead of like going in the edges of the maelstrom, just kind of finding the center where, you know, power comes from, you know, like a cold, um, not threatening and yet authoritative place.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's
many lessons. Many
similar
lessons.
to the bear, right? The
Yeah.
bear is a similar thing. You know, these are animals that are apex predators for
Mhm.
sure. It's not like we're denying. It's not a cuddly thing. I don't think you should take a tiger or a bear as a pet.
Mhm.
It's a horrible idea. But in many ways, not least of which for the animal itself, you know, it needs to be out and living its life as it wishes, but in safe spaces where it wishes. But I also think that energy is neutral. Energy is really neutral. You know, we can channel it in good or bad, negative or positive, or something else on that spectrum. You know, so the same thing is true with these apex predators who can seem, you know, some people have these emotions and feelings about them, but they're just living their life, right? This is just them living. They're not angry at the animal that they killed. They're hungry. This is what they're meant to eat, you know. And it's about this balance of, you know, the web of life that exists. What we have disrupted horribly, but you know, it still exists in some form. Um, oh my gosh. Polychrome Fizz says, right when you mentioned bear, I pulled a coffee cup out of the cupboard with a bear on it. Maybe bear wants to work with you too. So we are at our half hour. Can you believe it? We just chit chatted
I
the
know.
time away so easily.
We
But
should do that every day.
I know
I wish we could do
you
that
and
every
I,
day.
you and I get together, and it's really a gab
Yeah.
fest for sure. Um, but I want to know, first of all, is there any, like, this is my lovely question that I love to ask people. If somebody wanted to, let's say, work with an animal in spirit form or physical form, or they felt an inkling, like maybe I pulled this coffee cup and maybe the bear is asking me to work with it. Would you have any tips or tricks for people who want to work with these animals, whether it's a wild animal, you know, or an animal that in dream time or whatever? What would you suggest
Well,
to them? Any tips or tricks
you
that you
know,
would say?
I think that you know, for me, there is two, you know, there is the things that we observe and that we read, you know, like the animal that we observe from nature and that we believe carry a message, and that's a really like felt experience. And in that case, you know, like it might be interesting for you to, before you do any research on like what is the symbolism of the auk, or what is the, you know, like what is this animal, you know, just like really try to like write or define for yourself what was this encounter about, and then not kind of like layer other people's interpretations. Just like you I think that's
100%.
if you meet an animal in nature first, like just try to figure out what this encounter was about before getting too much layers of information. And then I will just say, you know, like for if obviously I don't meet tiger in my backyard often enough, but like if you feel, you know, if you feel an attraction to a certain animal that is not, you know, like part of the ecosystem of your megalopolis, work with images, work in visualization, create altars. um, I will just say this, you know, like it's okay to have a, you know, like cut an image in a newspaper. You don't have to have like I don't have any tiger in my house. You know, I don't have any tiger fur, tiger teeth. You
Yeah.
don't have to use the actual part of the animal. Usually they've been harvested in cruel
Right, right.
girls that just don't do that. Just work with an image, draw your own image, and then just like create the material you need with your own imagination. I think that's the most efficient work for
Yeah,
me.
yeah. exactly. You don't have to encounter the animal. Like I never encountered a real bear while I was doing the work with the bear, but these animals will come to you and show up for you. And you, like you said, I'm a person that, hey, you might have artifacts that you have found, then you know where they come from. That's one thing, but those of you also have to be careful because there's all kinds of laws about collecting artifacts, even feathers, which we think of as so innocent. You have to be, a little savvy about it, but you don't have to have it. You can have this beautiful image. You could have a little statuette. You could have so many things, and something will come to you. I think that's such a beautiful advice. And also, that advice of to really connect. Oh my gosh, to connect so deeply to these animals, and don't be so closed off to the possibilities. Just because you don't have that animal showing up physically doesn't mean that its energy doesn't want to work with you. And I think that's great advice. So do you have anything upcoming projects or classes or workshops or things that you're going to be appearances? Nothing?
Every day. I don't know. I will say, like, if you want to support me, like, consider becoming part of my Patreon. I have this, we have a great group going on. We do all sorts of tarot exercises, and it helps me basically continue to do my research. But then I do all sorts of classes all the time.
Yeah, and people get lots of benefits when they join your Patreon, because I know that you get a discount on workshops, and there's a community that you have, a really wonderful, active community. And so if you live in an area, especially if you live in an area where maybe you don't have other magical or tarot practitioners around you, esoteric people around you, this is a great lifeline to have this online community, right?
Well, yeah. So we're, like, all kind of good friends. I invite, interesting people, including, I have an archive video of you, Pamita, talking about your last book. But it's a place to learn to play. I do, like, live events, like basically free classes, like almost every week. We have one on Friday on the Year of the Hermit. I'm inviting Ronan Farrell, who has been running this incredible tarot archive, where he actually translates French historical text in English. So if you want to read Papus or all the French 19th century occultists, like he's basically translated all that stuff. So yeah, just join us. It's
oh my gosh, cool. I'm writing a book about plant magic right now, and I am totally I knew about, of course, since I was a kid, I knew about the language of flowers. What I didn't know is that it started in France.
Yeah.
And I'm looking into these old archive books from the 1800s, and they're so good. Oh my gosh, they are so good because they go into the history. A lot of these language of flower books are just like, this flower means this. It's like a code, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at these French books, they're so poetic and beautiful, and they go into a huge explanation of historical encounters and gods and goddesses, and oh my gosh, the books are so amazing. So I was totally thinking of you though while I was looking at them.
This is so good, especially because it's like to just quickly go back to the animals, during the medieval era, they had those bestiaries, and so bestiaries were just like proto-natural history books talking about, like the animal of the creation, but some of them, obviously, the unicorn, and then other a fancy creature didn't technically exist, but because they're mentioned in the Bible, they were part. But like it was not really about animal behavior. It was about like animal and their mythical stories. And then the world of flowers is filled with that. Like they used to just explain poetically all sorts of things. Like I remember. And I'll finish on this, so I won't bother you. But I remember this flower. I can't remember what it is, but it's a flower when it opens up. It doesn't smell very good. It smells like a little like
corpse flower.
No, it's like a small. I can't remember. It's a smaller. But anyway, the story they invented to explain the foul smell of that flower, which is slightly small, is that one day during the nativity scene, the Virgin Mary had to change the baby Jesus, and so she just took and she took a piece of, fabric and like changed the baby and then threw it in the, in the manger, and the dirty, the soiled fabric touched the flower, but it was the excrement of Christ.
Baby Jesus' poop.
And so apparently the people associated foul smell to the poop of Christ. They said, like the language of flower, like it's like, It's just so
Oh my
fun. There is so many great
gosh,
stories like
yeah.
this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always very excited when I discover like the root of something. Like I knew about this, but I've been researching it deeply, and then I found all these books. Of course, this originated in France,
Mm.
and this was what I have. I have French family
Oh,
that because I had a French boyfriend, and his family became my family now, and they're always saying French people invented that. French people invented that. And I'm like, oh, wait, you're right. Americans don't know that more than 50% of what we think is an American invention or is invented by French people. This is absolutely
I know.
true. So,
I don't. I personally, I don't feel responsible for how cold. I think flowers invented their own language, and then
yes,
we
yes,
just
yes.
like patiently, recorded the.
But these books are really phenomenal because of me being a lover of this since I was a teenager. I love the language of flowers. I think, of course, I must have been a Victorian lady in a past life and really was fascinated with this idea of the secret code you could send with flowers. And when I discovered these French books were so much better than the English translations or the ones that we had available to us, like Kate Greenaway's, and there's a lot of, English translations. I was like, oh my God, this book is so good. So that's where my head has been at, but I was so excited to talk to you and tell you about this because it was so fun. But anyway, I want to remind everybody that if you would like to learn about it, take a Zoom class with me and you'd like to learn about working with animal familiars, not flowers yet, but animal familiars, the class on January 13th is going to be an introduction to animal familiar magic, which is about how to identify a familiar, how to work with a familiar, what a familiar is, what they can lend to your magic, all of these sort of like foundational understanding of this. If you want to take that class, you can pay $40 and take the class, no problem. But I recommend there's a little secret workaround that you really should do, which is to go to animalfamiliars.com, pre-order the Witch's Guide to Animal Familiars, and then send us that pre-order information on animalfamiliars.com, and then you will get a coupon for a free entry ticket to the class, and we would love to have you there. I would love to see you there. And it's such a good deal. You get an amazing book. You get a $40 class plus a book for the price of a book, which is what, $17, $18 is not that much. So so thank you so much. Okay, thank you everybody for sticking around and watching. I want to say thank you to Laetitia. It's so great to see you. We have to talk again because I know I owe you another class and we haven't even talked about it. But
you're just a busy witch.
I know my book, my new manuscript, the first draft is due at the end of beginning of February. So after that, I have a little moment to breathe, and then we can plan our classes for 2025. Okay.
Have a great rest of your day.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Laetitia. And thank you guys so much. Just make sure you go to animalfamiliars.com and you'll learn all about the book and you'll get that free class. All right. Bye.